Okay, so today I want to talk about building line work. Um, I'm limited to 10 colors on this job, and this is the original artwork. I brought this in from Illustrator, and it's anti-aliased, um, or that is turned off. Anti-aliased is turned off so that I can get hard, crisp, clean lines, and there is no blur in between here, which causes a lot of people to have white gaps in their selections, um, and get that junky edge. And trust me when I say this file is at 600 resolution. And when this prints on the shirt, it's literally going to look like this. Um, Maybe even more like that. It's when you all blow up on the screen and you see these jagged edges, that's not going to look like that in print when you put it to film or you burn it to a CTS or a laser machine. It's not going to look like that on the edges. It will, but it'll be micro small, very small, and you won't be able to see it. It'll be it'll print nice and clean, and when the wet ink goes down and the squeegees go across the screen mesh and push the ink through, believe me, it'll soften up and be as clean as what you might see in vector. Um, so what I need to do is in this color and these 10 colors, I need to create shades. And so what I want to talk about is, a lot of people will create shades of like this line art here. And I'll select this color and pull it out, select color range, click on the reference color, and I just want that line art for right now. So I only want to deal with that. So I reduce that down so that I don't have any of the other shadow. And now in this vector file, there's a couple things I can do. One, I need to get kind of a darker bluish color tone. And it won't be 100% accurate, but it'll be pretty close because I'm utilizing this main color here and I'm just darkening it. So what I want you to know is you should probably avoid black as much as possible. Shading with black can be disastrous at times. And so I like to utilize the base so I can just, for one thing, since let me move this over. Since the teal, or all of these inks are going to be like 10% opacity. You look at my other colors, that's 10%, 10%. This is a variable. It could be 10, it could be 20, it could be 15 for your ink colors because they're not, unless you're double stroke on a 110 mesh, they're not opaque. So that opacity just represents the solidity here, just represents how transparent or transparent that ink is going to be when printing over a dark shirt. So if I take that selection, for example, it's still selected, and I knock it out of the base and go straight to shirt color. My shirt color is a kind of a green, very light green, so it's not going to darken up that much, but it'll darken it up a little bit. So that's if I take teal and print it straight to this green shirt. So you see that darkens it up a little bit. I don't want it to turn green. And this is a little bit of an exaggeration in the viewing of colors in channel separations. That's why when people ask me, and I have ADD, I jump around a lot on conversations and topics because everything seems to roll into another subject. And when I'm talking about something. And so it's hard for me to stay on task. But I say that because um, these, well, let me stay on topic. Um, so that teal is a semi-translucent ink. Um, what I was going to say, what I was going to say about these, because they're translucent and you're blending colors together. Sometimes customers, the screen print customers, they want a representation of how it's going to look on the shirt. Well, I can't really do that. Um, Essentially, the intent is for it to look like the original. So this is what it should look like on the shirt. That's what I'm heading for. But with the separations and how the inks react to each other, and you're blending halftones together, and you got opacity of different screen mesh from a 230 or a 150 or a 300 mesh. Those all will change the appearance of this print, and it's not going to look 100% like the original artwork anyways. This is screen printing on t-shirts, so yeah, it'll look very close, like 90% close, but there'll be a subtle difference. So I always tell my customers that want a proof of the separations to not expect that that's going to look like anything like the actual print, because sometimes you may even, like the actual proofs, you may color this so you can see it on a white background. A lot of people do that. They'll use paint or something. So it might end up looking like that. That's the proof of the seps. Um, so you say, well, why don't you just change it to white? Well, I can do that, but then, all the other colors that are blending together are not going to represent everything as accurately. So I stay away from separation proofs to the customer. It just doesn't show them really what it's going to look like. Especially not in spot color so much like this, but in very halftone, true simulated process, where you got dots blending over top of everything. That all depends on, do you double stroke it, slow stroke it, fast stroke it, use a hard squeegee, soft squeegee, just too many variables. So anyways, back to my point. So I got this selection. I knocked it out of that base, but I don't want to knock it out that much. So let's fill that base with, like, you can even go 50%. And then I need to darken it over top of the teal with something. So teal and red kind of make a muddy brown, right? So you can use this orange, or you can use the red, and just add a kiss of 10% in there. You see how that darkened up just a little bit? I'll do it again. 10%. Now let's jump that by 10. Now it turns brown. So I just want it a darker color. Now, because that red is going over the teal, you don't want to overdo it. You want to be very careful. And you can always apply more pressure on press to get something darker than you would want to. It's 30%. Take that down a little bit. That is, I can tell because I got my reader over here, my info palette. Always look at your numbers. That's 19%. I try to avoid using black. It's going to be too stark. If I just, put black in here, yes, it darkens it and looks great on screen, but then you got to remember, you're going to have dots in here. And black dots against a light background are going to show up far more in contrast than using color. And so I always gravitate toward darkening all my line art with color and not black. So that's why I want to use a little bit of orange. We got brown in here somewhere too. Yeah, brown right there. And that's a solid brown. So I know that they're going to lay that down pretty heavily. So I don't want to put a lot of that in there either. But because it's a pretty dark brown, I could put 10% in there. And once that gets laid down heavily, maybe that 10% will end up like 15 or 20. And so I'm forecasting what's going to happen on press. So I do got a line art there. And so that's another shade of color that I don't have in the separations. So that's what I'm looking for. Same for the green. I can click and reference this color shade of green, activate the RGB to reference that color. And then go to select color range, pull out that color. And now I'm going to give that green a solid fill. Take it out a little bit on the underbase, just enough. And I go by, like, I would imagine, like, if I cut it down to only 10%, so this is like 10%, 20%, I'm taking away from the underbase. And let's look at that green because it's not showing the translucency. So that's a straight knockout to the shirt. Now I can do that because we have a green shirt also, like a lime green. It's very close to the 360 that I'm using here for ink color. And I want to use the 360 because this is Disney and it's, you want to keep all the main colors that's used predominantly in the art, especially in type. So you actually want to use that color. You can mix it, but then Disney gets very questionable. They start questioning why it doesn't look like their real art. So anyway, go back to the base, knock that out a good bit. Say 40, that's knocking it out 60% from the base. I dropped it down to 40, but I'm taking away from, so that's really like 60%. And then I want to add some more color over top. Brown over green makes more green or more brown. So you can add very light percentage again, 10%, using that brown. I just want to make sure that I get a darker shade of the green. You can see how this actually kind of looks a little muddy brown or a muddy green. And if I have 10% of the brown here and I add in another 15% of the orange, it'll darken it up a little bit also. So you see that I'm trying to not use so much of the brown and I'm adding another darker color. And it's not really a darker color, it's just another color that is a shade darker than the green. But in doing so, I increased that to 15%, and 15% blending with 10% of the brown allows those dots to mix a little bit more. If I just use 10% and then 10% and then 10% of another color, those dots are only laying directly over top of each other. Whereas if I make one a little fatter, that's the intent. It helps it to blend more. So I wouldn't use anything of yellow or flesh or tan. We got solid green going down, but over top of that we have You could even use a little bit more of this teal, and that'll help darken it also. See that? And now that's going to help it push back into a good green, a good dark green. Whereas if I only relied on the orange and the brown, it may not be, it gives it more opportunity to go too dark. And so if I push green more back in there with teal, that helps maintain it a little bit more. So we're going to have a good line art of the green on there. And now I'm going to go with the shading line art of the flower. Select color range, click on the reference color, then go back and activate this side, which is the spot color version. Fill it solid on the yellow. I could take a little bit out of the underbase, just like 80%. You can see it does start to represent there a little bit. And then, by the time you go to, I might do that a little bit more. Another 10%, making it 70 or 63 here. One second. Okay, sorry about that. And I'm not editing this video. It's too much time. These are free videos. Take it or leave it. So I was trying to take out a little bit more from the base because once the base gets put down heavy and you try to get that bright, it'll fill in a little bit more. That 60 will become 70 or 75. Yeah, so I need to darken that to kind of I don't know, let's call it a dark yellow, but it's really looking kind of peachy. So let's look at orange because red is often over powerful. That's a dark red, 1665. It's not that dark, but it's pretty rich. So let's take the orange, and that's a pretty heavy orange. And that's also pretty solid. They're going to print that pretty heavily. So you don't want to use too much of it. Again, let's look at, 15%. And something else in here that's going to help darken that up. Let's see how dark the tan is. Flesh is kind of peachy looking. I don't want green. So if I use the tan, and that may work pretty well, leaning it toward this darker tan yellow kind of color, I would put a good bit of that in there, maybe 30%. Let's see. So notice as I jump this up using the arrow keys, what I do in curves or levels is like if you click on this point, you can drag this around, and you can do it manually by clicking and dragging in it. But you can also highlight this number now and use the arrow keys and hold down the shift key, and it just jumps by 10. If you just click the arrow key, you can add single percentages. So I like to use the shift key and jump by tens. I want to back that down to 20% in the tan. That's going over the yellow. It's going over solid yellow. And yeah, I put some orange in there over top. Maybe I don't need that in the orange, but maybe I would put more of the tan. So I go back and forth, as you can see, in my decision-making process and kind of evaluate what I should do. Um, I am going to put another 10%. That that means with this tan over the flesh or over the yellow, that tan is going to be showing a darker color of that, but it's only at 40%. That darkens it up a little bit, but I want to turn it toward a little bit more of a orangish or reddish color. So I'm adding that orange in there just to kind of bring it back to a little bit closer to this. Now it's not, in this case, it's not going to be an exact match, right? Because I'm just limited by 10 colors, so I can't do it as well. And then pretty much for the same here on the line art of the flower, select color range, reference that color, come back in. This is an example of when I would use color range when I have strong solid areas of flat color over here in like a vector file. Color range is ideal for doing that type of separation. I hate color range for simulated process, would never do it that way. If I'm blending a lot of halftones together and stuff, I might use color range to also make masking, isolated areas, and I would use that to pull in, but I would not use it in simulated process and pick my colors and, help create a separation because it's too choppy. They did improve it a little bit more, so it's better for these types of things, but these types of jobs, but it's not that great for true simulated process or even pulling colors out for CMYK would just never do it. So we go to the red and fill that in solid. Again, go to the base, knock some out. I can go pretty dark on that one. 40% halftone. I took out 60%, leaving 40%. And then come back up to, there's not, maybe a teal, because I would normally like to darken this up with a little bit of blue and to get that raspberry kind of look. Let's see what the teal does. It's going to make it a little bit more brown. I don't have a really raspberry color in here. I just want to aim at good contrast now. And I'm putting 20% brown in there. And that's really all I can do with that. I don't, as you see, I'm not using a dark red in the artwork. And I because the 1665 is so predominant in other parts of the art, I would not choose to pick and actually use a raspberry color because it's just not enough everywhere else. So the predominant color is going to be your orange here and the red there, sorry. And yeah, that's an area where I'm going to have to sacrifice and not get an accurate representation. Uh, you know, the customer's going to have to live with that. So, and with it being so small, it's just in the outlines of the flowers here. Like they more than likely, they're not going to care as much about that. I just coming from my experience, I happen to have worked at Disney for 11 years in the Disney Design Group on the apparel team. And so I kind of have a good idea of what they're going to be looking for. Now, since I don't have a beige, I just have a yellow and a tan. I'm going to use a lot of the flesh and the tan and the yellow to help create this beige color. So let's take that. Definitely would not use black in there. A lot of people, that's another major mistake is that when people making a sand color, they're simulated that. Just back off of the black as much as you can, or try not to use black in the sand at all because it's always going to be too overpowering. So anyway, select that color, activate your RGB because this is the same file over here. It's the same exact file. I just happen to go to Windows, Arrange, and then I drag down and create a new window of the same file. And then I move it over here off to the left so I have something to compare to. So I click on this color, go to select color range, pull out from the RGB, and I really want to just isolate that area right now. Well, no, I'm going to go ahead and reference this color also. Select color range, and I'll get this color, and I can expand that out to capture some of that teal. And I'll show you what I would do there. It's like just fill it in with black in the foreground and then adjust levels because even on the gloves, that is like an isolated area where I'm going to fill it in and make it a mask. So now I'm utilizing a mask here as a selection tool. And I'll show you, I can just click on that. I click on that in case you don't know, it's like I'll hold down the shift or the option key or control key, sorry. Control or command for a Mac. Control key and then click on the channel and it selects every pixel in there, whether it's gray or black or solid black. It just selects every pixel in there. So now I can come back and reference this color in here. And I know that's going to, because I have a solid mask and in my separations, I'm pretty much going to have solid tan color down under that. This is shirt color coming through there. So that's black ink right there. So I know I got a solid white underbase. I'm going to leave it like that. And on the yellow, let's add a little bit of maybe 15% yellow. And then flesh is a very peachy color. So I just want it's got a little bit of red in it. If you look at this flesh, it's got a little bit of red in that color. And so you don't want to put that down too heavy, but it's such a light color that you could use a good bit of it. Let's say another 20%. of that. And then let's look at the tan. Tan is a little bit darker than the flesh, and it's kind of a brownish color. I like 3 different colors having percentages in that area, because 3 colors blending together helps improve your chances of filling the area a little bit more consistently. Especially if it's a very light color, you could put a lot more percentage in there. So this is 20%. That's 7% on the tan because it's a little bit of a darker color. And this is almost a greenish color. I might be able to allow some shirt color to come through there in this case, because like if I took that all out, the base out all the way, you'd see how green that is. And here in this case, I'm dropping it down to allow a little bit more shirt color to come through there and help create kind of a tingy, washed out green. I just not sure how much I would do at this point, because there's a lot of play on that underbase. They could print it very light, they can print it very heavy. So don't rely on the underbase knocking this out to get an accurate color. It helps you get a tinge of the other color. So let's say that's going to be, I'm going to put it at 80%. It just helps it a little bit. And I really am going to shy away from actually using green, but because the green is a 360, it's also a very light, I'm going to put a few dots in there. 5% maybe. Because this is, so we got 5%, 20%, 7% going on here. Not going to use the teal or the red or the orange. If I did, you can darken up sand colors with orange much better than you can with red. Red's going to be too contrasty. So, you know, you could put, you know, 10% in there and see, that's would make a good sand color. And orange is not going to be too overbearing. If you put red in there, it's going to overpower it too much. I don't even think I need that much orange in there. And I'm going to put 3% of the orange. And we, in our shop, we hold a 3% dot. So actually we hold 2%. So I know the 3 is going to hold. There's something going to be there. That's our shop. And then so now I don't have any black going down in this artwork. Don't want black to make any kind of a sand color. So here's even more of a green. So I'm going to activate, and I can even use this as a selection tool to just make sure that I don't get any other color out here other than this green. And I typed in the letter I to get the eyedropper. And I click on that color, go to color range, reference the color, and drop it down to only get that shade. Because this shade is a little darker than this shade. But right now I'm going to just a drop on this. So it's green. It's leaning toward the same beige color. You notice I filled this in. This is all consistent across here, but now I can just add a little bit more green in this area. Let's see what 10% does. That helps it a little bit. 20%. That's pretty close. Let's see what 30% might look a little heavy. So if I put 20% in, And then on press, it actually gains a little bit and goes to 25. It might be pretty close to where I really want it. So I'm going to leave it at 20. And I'm going to put a little bit more flesh in here. No, yeah, flesh, because it's got a little bit of red in it. Now I've already got a percentage in there. So you see I got 20%. Look at my eyedropper. That's set on the options. I can't do it right now because I get this open, but I'll show you in a minute. But that's already got 24% and that's 20%. Um, this was 20% across the board. And now I'm just adding a little bit more up in here. 28, 9, 30. So that's 20. This is 30%. That's definitely creating a little bit more shade, but it's too much. It's leaning a little more toward a brown shade. So I'm going to cut that back down to only like 5%. And then I'm going to look at the green again. Maybe take that down a little bit more. No, I'm going to do the opposite. What did I put in there? 20 and 24. %, nothing in the red, teal, green, tan, 7%, 24% in the flesh. I'll cut that in half. And that'll bring that a little closer to what we're talking about over here. And I just want to add a couple more percentages. Into the green. But so you see what I'm doing. In essence, I'm building up a simulated process job, putting halftones over. People go into this debate on whether or not this is a simulated process. If I'm blending 2 or 3 colors together, I consider that simulated process. Even though this looks like a spot color job overall, but I got to do a lot of maneuvering over here to get this to look right. So that's it for the tip. I just I'll continue on and do the rest of this, but you get the gist of this story, and that's all I got to say about that. I will say, come back in and visit my other videos for additional tips. And on my Facebook page, don't forget to click like and or share. I I don't make any money off of these videos because they're all just sharing on YouTube the little tips. But and I don't make any money off of YouTube because the screen print industry viewing my videos, searching for separation information, is not as wide of an audience as everybody else out there doing YouTube videos that are influencers. And so I'm not an influencer. I'm trying to be an educator. But, I don't make enough views and clicks to make any money on that to generate any revenue. So these are all just free stuff. And that's why I also don't put a lot of time into editing them. making them nice and pretty and perfect. But keep looking. I appreciate the participation. Thank you.